What's going on, everyone? Carlos Gil here at K-Swiss headquarters in Los Angeles. Joining me here across the table is Omar Prestwich, who runs social media for the brand, and Barney Waters,
that's right,
who is the president of K-Swiss.
That's right, yep. Nice to be here. Welcome to our podcast studio.
You know, it's not every day that I walk into an office for an iconic global brand like K-Swiss and walk into a podcast room.
Right.
Which we're going to talk about all the amazing things you guys are doing. But let's just kind of address right off the surface, because we're in your podcast room.
Yeah.
Both of you gentlemen produce a podcast which is called
CEOs Wear Sneakers.
CEOs Wear Sneakers.
Right.
So what is the mindset behind taking this brand that produces sneakers and apparel and flipping it into a media entity that produces a podcast?
Well, yeah, so that's really, for me, it's about brand transparency. It's about how the world operates now in terms of brand communication to the consumer. It's no longer tradition, obviously we know traditional marketing kind of went away. So how do you get your message through? The truth is that people are listening to new forms of media like podcasts. And so, why not a brand speak about what it stands for? And, we actually don't talk about sneakers every day on our podcast. We talk about our consumer target, which is entrepreneurs. So we bring in young entrepreneurs and interview them and try and sort of add some value to the listener and not sell them sneakers, but it's like, let's contribute to the culture. So that's the idea behind the podcast.
You are in a way selling them sneakers though. And you're selling them the community,
that's
the
right.
Brand aspect. And I recall being 15, 16 years old, we were talking about this off camera. I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, went to high school out there. And when I was coming up as a kid, I wanted to be the six Backstreet Boy.
Yeah.
The 6 NSYNC member. No, seriously, real talk. I wanted to be one of them. And it was cool to wear like the white, chunky K-Swisses.
Yeah.
I was seeing them downstairs. I used to work at a shoe store owned by Underground Station.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if Underground Station still exists and if they carry K-Swiss or not, but I was like all decked out. K-Swiss, everything. For me, it was cool. And then I kind of grew up and I started having kids and I became this corporate business professional. And now it's like Cole Haan, Ferragamo's.
That's right.
But it's cool because I'm taking a look at what you guys are doing, obviously through Gary Vee and other influencers and partners out there, and I start seeing Casey Adams is dropping here on the set. You have other young entrepreneurs that are coming by, which, again, to your point, you're not necessarily selling the sneakers, but you're bringing these individuals into your culture.
Yeah, well, and what it really came from was this idea of differentiation around the brand. That's the key, is when we looked at the sneaker market, when we took over K-Swiss to bring it back to relevance. So K-Swiss is an old sneaker brand, 50 years old, a lot of nostalgia, but it had sort of fizzled away over the years. And so our job was to bring it back. And this is going back to 2016, so we're about year 3 now. And what was obvious was we couldn't compete against the bigger brands in our space on their terms. So, and if I always say it's a Coke and Pepsi market for sneakers. It's Nike and Adidas. They would crush us like a fly if we go athlete to athlete against who's the best sports brand, right? So we decided we have to kind of find an open lane, and that's true for any brand. And so we realized that at the same time we were looking for something new, culturally there was this big shift of young people's goals from who can run the fastest to who can run their own business, all right? And this has undeniably happened where it's cool now to be a CEO or to have your own brand or to be successful or to be hustling. Like grinding is now like a badge of honor.
Right.
Who can work the hardest. It wasn't long ago, it was like who's really street, who's dealing drugs. That's how you were cool, right? Now
that's
who's
what
in the boardroom.
hustle was defined as back in the day.
Now it's different. And so we picked up on that cultural shift. At the same time, we were looking for a lane, and we said, okay, K-Swiss is sneakers for entrepreneurs. So if you want to be the fast runner, there's other brands that you can go listen to their voice. But if you're trying to hustle your way to success, then come listen to us because we're going to speak your language. And as you said before about Ferragamo's, or Cole Haan, in the old days when you went to the office, you're like, I need something cool, but it's got to be formal. Well, now that's not true anymore. Now, even the CEO at your company is probably wearing jeans and sneakers. Mark Zuckerberg's wearing a hoodie and jeans, right? He's the most successful guy in the world, or one of them. So the rules changed. So that's why we also called the podcast CEOs Wear Sneakers, is because we're also changing the face of what a CEO looks like. Okay, so it could be a young African-American 18-year-old from LA who's a CEO of their own brand now, and it makes people go, wait, that's a CEO? Yeah, that is a CEO these days. The rules have changed, and we're outfitting them, and those are K-Swiss's people.
Let's talk about, though, I want you to expand on what you just said. So the rules have changed, the aesthetics, if you will, of what a CEO has changed. However, to push back on that, when I, as a agency owner, walk into a potential client or a client's office, or I step on stage, there's something about appearance of what I'm wearing, also what's on my feet, that goes hand in hand with what comes out of my mouth.
Yeah, let me answer that for you. That's a really good point. Is what we found is, and so we spent some time over our local WeWork, so obviously part of this is you've got to speak to the consumer, and that's what Omar does all day, every day. But one of the things is we realized is that conventional wisdom is that when somebody wants to go to see a client or take a client out or be in a business situation, they have to look more formal. Okay, now if you're in a law firm or you're an accountant, maybe you do have to wear a suit and tie. Okay, that's fair enough. But what you find when we're talking about our target consumer of a young entrepreneur, they do dress up for the occasion, but they don't try and get more formal. They try and get cooler. Okay, and this is the insight that the nugget that we picked up on. Because if you just go with what you think everyone says, you go, oh, we have to make smart sneakers that have a wingtip in brown leather. No, what they told us was, if I'm going out for drinks with a client, I'm actually want to dress up to make them, so I look like I'm a bit more with it, a bit more hip, because that's who people want to do business with, especially if you're selling social media services or marketing or cultural stuff. You got to look the part, right? So in fact, a sneaker for a CEO is not necessarily a dress sneaker. It definitely has to have an air of sophistication, but it's also got to have a little bit of flash to it, or a little cool factor.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So as you're, Omar, on social media,
Yeah.
and you're seeing all the different tags that are coming across with K-Swiss, are you seeing that's predominantly a younger generation that's promoting the brand, or is it like a mix of like myself, my 30s and above?
Yeah, so that's awesome. It's a little bit of both. A lot of young people right now, obviously, because as what you said, it's very hip-hoppy feeling, and that's a whole culture, right? But then when you introduce Gary Vee and his community of entrepreneur-minded people, a lot of those people are, I want to say, a good portion of them are maybe in like their mid-30s or above, and they have that nostalgic feeling. So when they put on K-Swiss, I'm starting to see a lot of I remember K-Swiss. So then there's that, and so now it's like you get to see a little bit of both. And the young generation, they know, like maybe they didn't get to experience K-Swiss, but they know, and I think that's a cool thing, because they're like, I'm gonna bring it back. They've just never experienced it when it was here, and so that's what I love seeing.
Yeah, it's an attention game. Okay, so the job you have to do as a marketer these days is, how do I get people's attention in a social world, right? That's the job, and it almost became easier in the old days. If you were buying media, you had to pick from channels or magazines, or even if you were buying digital ad space, you had to buy from 1,000 websites potentially, and then those websites started to get together and create these little groups. You still had to pick. Okay, well now it's like Facebook and Instagram. So it got real simple, but it also became a lot more difficult, because how you succeed on those channels is not easy, right? So otherwise, there's so much content going through the same pipe that it's blowing by.
I call
so
it a
fast.
giant digital ocean.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to be like the biggest shark, or or stand out somehow to get noticed in that ocean. And so that's what sort of drew us to Gary Vee, is we need to put someone a sort of compelling personification on this story of entrepreneurship, and it was him. And it's no different than Nike picking Jordan to put a face on their basketball point of view back in the day. That's the same thing, and the parallels are really similar if you think about it. And it's just that it's a different, one's sports and one's essentially careers or business or.
So to your point, let me break this down. So K-Swiss, part of the marketing strategy is You're trying to get in front of more entrepreneurs and business and working professionals.
Well, no, let me tell you what it is. It's that we believe that it's the same consumer. It's not that we're going to go away from these guys and go and find some new guys. We think it's the same person.
Okay.
It's the kid who's shopping at Foot Locker or going to the mall and going to Journeys or wherever they're shopping for sneakers. What we're saying is their aspirations have changed. So Nike's going to talk to them about, hey, let me skim a minute off your mile pace, or hey, are you balling like Kevin Durant? And I'm going to say, hey, are you hustling to build your own future? And so I'm just using a different voice to the same person. I'm not going after a different person. Okay, so in the old days, the old high school kind of cliche is you go down to high school, American high school, is like the jocks are standing there with the football helmets on, the nerds are over here, right?
Right.
The cheerleaders, the goths. Now these kids are all the same, right? They all do a little bit of everything, right? So the guy who's on the football team is probably writing a business plan at the weekend, and the nerd who used to get their books knocked out of their hand, everybody wants to be friends with because
they know that person's going to be worth a lot more money.
Exactly.
Once they're out of high school.
Exactly. So, and maybe that kid who's the nerdy kid's actually really good at esports. So that all the lines are blurred. So it's about mindset. It's like I always say you can't tell an entrepreneur from the outside. Okay, I can't tell who's an entrepreneur. It's in here and it's in here. So your voice, you have to say something that they're gonna hook onto. That's the key, and that's like marketing 101 is, what can you say that connects with a need in that person's head? And if you can do that, they're gonna listen to you. Now, that gets you traffic.
Mm-hmm.
What you really want is somebody who stays, not just comes once.
Right.
And so getting someone to stay is about community, and that's what Omar's expertise is like building relationships with people who come once and they're like, wow, this is a pretty good place to hang out. Yeah, he actually talks to me and he speaks my language, and they're going to keep coming back.
Which a lot of brands aren't doing that well nowadays.
Right.
A lot
doing it now.
Yeah, no, I see that. He's probably going on the gram right now.
Well, I kind of want to show you guys something like literally today. Let's see if I can find it because I've been messaging a lot of people. Here he is. So this guy, look at the conversation of just one person, right? Like, I'll show you. This is just one person. This is how I interact. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but I said something like, oh, by the way, this is Omar because of what he wrote here. Happy to see what you guys are doing. I am a convert, so great job. Never owned K-Swiss before, and now I have 3 pairs and find value in flipping the Gary V shoes as well.
All the time now.
So I was like, dude, this is, because then he explains like an issue that he had. I'm like, oh, this is Omar, by the way. I was talking to you on Twitter. And I'm like, that's the same guy.
Well, I know we are here in this office right now because you engaged me on Instagram on a post to buy.
Yeah.
Which now we're here, we're creating content, and that amplifies the brand even more. So
yeah,
really kudos and props to you.
Yeah, I agree. You've done a hell of a job. But the other thing I would say to people is, your engagement on social now is not just about customer service. Okay, that's one part of it. But it has to be beyond that. You've got to have dialogue with people, and I think what Omar does is when he speaks to people or he doesn't write one thing like, here's the number for customer service. You could see here, it's ongoing discussions, and they're talking about entrepreneurship and the brand's values, and the conversations are off on tangents, so that's how you start to like really relate to people and have them relate to you as a brand, is you're in personal discussions, right? I mean, it's not just, here's the price, here's the link.
What would you say are some entrepreneurial lessons that your customers can walk away from the way that you're running this business?
Well, for me, I mean, Omar, you can talk about some specific social tactics, but I'd say stand for something different. That's something I've always talked about. And I think that's the basis of this rebrand of K-Swiss is, we've found an open lane, job number one. And then you've got to like be relentlessly pursuing like everything kind of falling under that North Star. And then the other thing I would say that's really important right now is brand transparency. Is, first of all, I'm like, should we be podcasting? Like, should the president of the company be on a mic? Well, why not? In fact, people expect to know who companies are now. They want to know, and they do know. They know Omar now personally. They know people by their first names in our company because we communicate, we video us. We have a show called Inside K-Swiss. We have the podcast. So I would say let people know who you are. Show show them what your values are, and don't be afraid of doing that. And we've built a nice studio here, but it cost hardly anything. We just turned one of our offices. I got this off of Amazon. I stuck it up myself. All right, these pictures came from home. This whole studio probably cost $100.
Wow.
I mean, and it just and blood, sweat, and tears. Now,
nice table here.
The equipment was a bit more, but what I'm saying is, it's the bar of entry is really slim. And in fact, you can just do it on your phone. Some of the most sticky content on LinkedIn now is just people walking to work, talking to the camera. And so I think there's no excuse not to get involved and and connect more on a more emotional level with your customer.
Will you get to a point where the brand's putting out more entrepreneurial content that doesn't necessarily focus on the apparel, in this case the sneakers, and have a message or have video content such as other people's podcasts?
Us featuring other people's.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when we talk about our mission, it's to outfit and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. Okay, so with the outfitting part, okay, I got that covered. Gary V sneakers, you got great sneakers for entrepreneurial situations. Inspiring entrepreneurs is all about content creation. So that's how do you inspire someone? Okay, we bring Casey Adams in here and we let him tell his story, and you maybe listen and go, I never heard of him before, but wow, a 15-year-old, built his own business and is now an 18-year-old CEO. Can I be inspired by that and maybe take one step on my own journey? That's now we're having that, we're giving more value than the shoe. So it's like product and additional value. So that's what this is about. That's why we create that content. So the answer to your question is yes, that first of all, it's our own, and then ultimately though, it should be a lot of it. And you should see the same level of endorsement of entrepreneurs with K-Swiss as you see athletes for our other brands in our space.
Now let's talk about the partnership with Gary Vaynerchuk, aka Gary V. We see the line of sneakers behind you, gentlemen. We have the exclusives right here. We have the newest, Clouds and Dirt. Let's kind of start from the beginning. How did that partnership come to fruition?
Yeah, well, and actually Omar was a customer at that time. Mm-hmm. So I met Omar at a Gary V event that we threw, and that's how we got to know each other, and ended up working at the company.
So let me stop you right there, because I actually find that fascinating. So you're a customer of the company, you're following the brand, and then you meet their president at a Gary V event about 4 or 5 months ago?
Nah,
longer than
like 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah, and then we'd been friends, but that was like the first time where Barney and I really connected.
Yeah, it wasn't a Gary V event, it was a different event, and stayed in touch. But then we met again at the Gary V first launch ever.
Yep.
On Melrose Avenue.
And I flew from Salt Lake just to meet Gary, waited in line, did that whole thing, Barney, and then that was it. Like I came back home, and
so let me break this down.
2 years later.
You meet a successful C-suite executive, you stay in touch with him, I'm sure you're not like right hooking him at all, but you're staying in touch and forming this relationship, and then you end up getting a job at an iconic brand running social media.
Yeah, what was amazing was he stayed in touch, did exactly the right way, right? Everybody's accessible if you just call and hang out. He was in LA, and then eventually Omar called me, hey, I'm going to come to LA for a couple of days. Can I come say hi? I said, sure, because I liked him. I'm like, yeah, come in the office. And then it was an event that night that I knew Gary was attending and I was going to attend. And I said to Omar, hey, I'm going to an event tonight and Gary's going to be there. Why don't you come with me? Because I knew Omar was a big fan. And so I said, meet me at this location. So he met me. And in fact, as he met me, we walked in and we were in the elevator with Gary.
Oh, wow.
Just by timing. So now Omar's with me and Gary in an elevator. And, so that was just sort of an opportunity of Omar. And then as we were talking at that event, I thought he was a music producer because he used to run a record label. And then he was talking about the social media work he was doing. I said, I thought you were in the music business. He said, no, I'm actually doing social media now. I said, well, I'm looking for a community manager. And then the next day,
wow,
we hired him.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
He created it himself, created the opportunity.
That's awesome. That's an awesome story. And my recommendation to you would be tell more of that story. There's a lot of folks out there that dream of working in social media for a brand. And I know nowadays firsthand how difficult it can be.
The advice is to give as much value without expecting anything in return. I loved K-Swiss before the Gary V collaboration, and I would buy shoes and I shot photos and I would do everything, and I'd email it to whoever in the company that I knew. I don't know if you knew that. But that's what I would just advise anybody is if you want to work with a company or a brand or whatever, figure out where you would fit in within that company, what you're good at, and show them the value that you can create nonstop.
I agree.
And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
I think you can work with any company nowadays, regardless of education or even really experience.
Yeah.
I think part of that, what I hear there is you're a customer and a fan of the brand above all.
Yeah, which is huge to me. You know, for me, I'm thinking someone who's that passionate about our mission and really understands it, I'd love to have them in the building. You know, he inspires us every day with the energy. We need that. You know, but he also had real expertise in the area we were hiring for. So you can't just have one or the other. You know, if you can do both, great.
So let's go back to Gary. So you were saying before this partnership?
So we decided, hey, we're going to be a brand for entrepreneurs. We think this culture is really moving. This is our opportunity to jump on something that's untouched in terms of from a sneaker perspective. So then it was like, who could represent this for us? And all roads led to Gary. You know, on social media, it was just like in my feed constantly. I'm like, this is the guy, you know. So I was thinking of, is there someone in hip hop who could pull off the idea of being a legit entrepreneur? Is there a legit entrepreneur who could pull off being kind of cool to millennials? And it was really hard to find the right fit that could do both. But all the time I'm looking, Gary keeps popping up in my feed and his audience is growing. And I just thought, that's the guy. So I did a cold email, info@GaryV back then. And my pitch was, hey, we believe entrepreneurs are the new heroes of youth culture. And how about you and me make the first signature sneaker for an entrepreneur?
Boom.
Ding, send. And then that was it. And then they wrote back, his assistant wrote back, like, let's meet.
Was he like sold on this idea? Was it love at first sight?
Sold. Done. Yeah. So easy meeting. I mean, the thing is with Gary is every meeting's easy because he knows what he wants, and if it's the same as what I want. So we're not trying to like negotiate or pull a fast one over each other. It's like from day one it's been, we see the world the same way, we think the same things are cool, we think the consumer's moving in, so put it together.
Do you see your relationship with him more of like you would see your relationship with a true business partner, or is it more of influencer marketing?
No, 100% business partner. He wouldn't do influencer marketing. He's not that guy, you know. And so it's all about partnership. It's like when you get an entrepreneur. Here's a really interesting difference. When you get an entrepreneur as a partner, you're getting a ton of business expertise, and you're getting someone who's relentlessly hustling for you, because that's the nature of an entrepreneur, right? If you get a celebrity as your thing, you're going to get the hours in the contract. Mm-hmm. But Gary will call you in off hours and be like, hey, what are we doing about? He'll do more than you asked him for, and he'll push you as much as you're pushing. So that's really interesting.
The way I look at getting a shoe deal nowadays, I'm not sure of how many shoes Gary signed on for. I know at ComplexCon, in the very brief interview I did with him, he had announced there was another shoe that was going to be dropping next year. But I look at nowadays getting a shoe deal is like getting a book deal. I've followed Gary for 10 years now. I've seen him publish 5 New York Times bestsellers. Heck, I just got my first book deal to publish a book that comes out next year. So I'm excited. It's like, I got the book. But now it's like, all right, as an entrepreneur, do I follow that path? Do I pursue getting my own cologne, my own cigar line, like my own sneaker, my own loafer?
Why not? I mean, I think the truth is you don't have to write a book anymore. It's like you've just got to have a audience that's engaged with you, that's legit. That's the thing. And it's actually not just the audience, because I think what's proven is people with big audiences that post one picture of K-Swiss doesn't move the needle.
Correct.
Okay, someone with a smaller audience that really buys into it is what moves the needle. So we've gone from macro influencers to micro influencers. Now, influence is a verb, okay? So in other words, if you've got 2 million followers, doesn't mean you're an influencer, okay? Because unless you are influencing someone, unless I'm saying to you, man, I tried these on and they're fantastic and you all should try them, now I'm influencing. So I'm actively, but just sitting back with an audience doesn't mean anything.
Right. Well, you said legit following before, so I was hoping you could expand on what do you consider as an executive a legit following?
What I mean by that is an engaged following. So what I think is the hidden or the kind of undervalued component of social followings is goodwill. It's like there are certain people out there who have 1 million followers, and they have and there's someone else next to them who has 1 million followers, but these people will sell sneakers and these people won't, or this person can sell wine and this person can't, because the engagement of that follower is more shallow. The difference with Gary is people want him to win, okay, because they have goodwill towards him, okay. It's not that I think he's cool or not. Like, I think Kanye's cool, but I'm not trying to help him out. In fact, you know what I mean, I don't want to help that guy. I don't really relate to him, but I think he's fascinating. I watch him. Gary says, hey, it's my birthday, I want to give something back to him. Omar's a guy that has a lot of goodwill. People want him to win. That's about his personality. Okay, so again, like, not all people with a social following of the same size are the same.
Agreed.
Have the same ability to influence, and it's the goodwill factor that's key. And some people just have it, and some don't.
I've been saying this for years.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
People, I think what it is, people like rooting for the underdog, right? So for the Kanye example, Kanye's already made it.
Yeah.
He doesn't probably have to work another day in his life.
But Gary's made it. But why do people?
Gary, I think, has a relatability factor to him. And I think that is true influence.
Yeah.
When you can relate to an ounce of someone's story, when you see a part of yourself in someone else who's wealthier and more famous than you.
Yeah.
And I think, again, if you're going to compare like Kanye and Gary Vee, they're two totally different breeds.
Yeah, so recently...
to your point, I don't relate to Kanye at all, but I see Gary and it's like, all right, like, here's a guy that I want to see him win also, and I see a little piece of me in his hustle.
Yeah, did you see recently Derrick Rose had a big game? He had like a 30
over 50 points.
A 50-point game, right? What I watched that and the reaction to him having a great game. One game, regular season, okay? The whole NBA was cheering him on, okay? So he has that goodwill. As soon as I saw that, I thought, he's got that factor. It's like, people will do anything for him because he's a great story. If James Harden scores 50,
right,
no one cares.
It's to be expected.
Derrick Rose did it. Everyone's like, just sort of gushing about what a success, because he's been through a hard time, obviously, but people want Derrick Rose to succeed.
And this question for both of you gentlemen, should entrepreneurs out there carry their heart on their sleeve and their emotion and be pouring out the not so much the wins, but the true hustle, the losses?
Yeah, 100%. I really like that's where people tie in. That's where you can relate. That's when you feel what they feel, and that's where you build a community.
Yeah, and it also depends. It's like, if you're trying to build an audience, you should talk about who you are and what you're about, but not everybody wants to build an audience. I mean, I think it's good to, and you can build influence and business from it and monetize it and all the other things, but you don't have to. Like, some people want to have a quiet life and live in the country and, be great, take care of the kids and go to the soccer game, like, no problem. So you don't have to, but if you want the influence and all the spoils, then yeah, you should be putting your heart on your sleeve.
I like this conversation around influence because I'm the first person to raise my hand and say, like, influencer marketing can be gained, all day long, but truly moving people to buy, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's challenging.
Yeah.
And I know, working on the brand side for many years, now working on the agency side, working with influencers, you see these like highs and lows. And like, to your point, Gary has a very loyal following. I think most influencers wish that they would have that sort of loyalty. I think most brands, when they do an influencer campaign, wish that they had that sort of loyal following. So how do you kind of separate, going back to what you were talking about before, how do you separate, like, all right, we should invest resources in a Gary Vee, or invest in maybe throwing a few bucks to an influencer to promote our shoes?
We've done both, and we've seen the results of both. So now it's almost like we know that this one works best. And we know that we're looking for things like consumer goodwill to that person, engagement of that person's audience, and obviously there's things like brand fit as well. But the reason Gary has loyalty is because, and we've learned from this, right, is that he is relentless in answering consumers back. Like, he constantly will write you back, and it's just, and it's so tiring to be on social media all day. I mean, we laugh about it, about everyone's on their phones, but you see people who are social media professionals.
It's maintenance.
It's hard, right? It's constant, like, and Omar will tell you, it's like 24/7, right?
Yeah.
So it's easy to not do that and be like, why haven't I got any customer loyalty? Whereas the people who are like grinding it out, 24/7 on responding, is amazing. Like, people write to Gary all the time and be like, can I get a pair of those for free? And I think, I read this stuff and go out and buy it, and then Gary will write, done, And I'm like, he's nicer than I am.
Right.
He's nicer than I am, and that's why people are more loyal to him than they are to me. Because he'll sometimes go, yeah, I'm going to randomly gift you. Whereas I look at it and go, if you really want to help me out, go buy them.
I think
That's
he
the
also
difference.
does, I think, he'll go on some of these comments and then click on the people, because when you hear him talk, he'll say, I know you, or I recognize you, or he'll call people out on certain things. And that's where I think, I know I've learned a lot, like, oh shit, he's paying attention beyond that. Maybe, I'm guessing, that person that he would say done, I wonder if he did click on that, like, who is this random person?
Maybe, exactly. So that's going the extra mile. I would say, from an advice standpoint, is when you're putting your brand with a personality, you're putting a lot of eggs into that basket. So you've got to make these decisions kind of quickly, but there's a risk element, especially these days. One false move, that person's career can be done in an hour, and we've seen that happen a lot. And that's also true of brands. We have to be careful what we say. So when you're entering in relationships, the stakes are kind of high, and you have to kind of really trust that you know who you're getting into business with, and that's just one thing to consider. I think that's something that is becoming more and more important.
So I will say this, like, to your credit, with working with Gary, my son came to visit me over the summer at this point, and I got a pair of these from speaking at Vid Summit. And immediately when my son walks in and he sees these, this box sitting in my living room, he's like, Dad, you got the new Gary V's. Oh my God, he's 13. He's 7th grade.
It makes my heart warm.
So like, kudos to you guys, what you're doing. And it's not me imposing on myself, like, hey, you have to watch Gary V content, because he'd rather play Fortnite than watch Gary V. In fact, he's more like a Ty Lopez fan, if anything. But like, it's iconic at this point. He sees the stripes, he sees the signature, and it's like, wow, guess what happened to my clouds of dirt? He took them with him.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how this grew. And in fact, this has got to a point where if you see somebody wearing the K-Swiss Gary V shoes or the Clouds and Dirt, like if you saw someone in an airport wearing them, I'm going to be like, hey, what's your hustle? What are you into? You now can recognize people, and if you see them wearing this brand, you're going to know a little bit about them.
I agree.
And that's huge for us.
I agree. Because it's not like an Air Jordan, right? If I see someone, I'm on airplanes a lot, if I see someone wearing a pair of J's, it's like, all right, they could be wearing it for fashion. Right. They're probably not an athlete. They're probably not at LA Fitness playing basketball.
But you know a little bit about them by the fact they're wearing it. And if they're wearing a certain type of Jordan, like if they're wearing the Cactus Jacks, I know a lot about who they are and what they're into. If I see someone wearing a Supreme item, or I know what they're into, I probably know what they're looking at, what music they're listening to, right? Because that's what brands do. They're like silent forms of communication. The vision of this was, if you see someone with the K-Swiss shield or the shoes, and you think that person's probably an entrepreneur, that's the moment that we're getting somewhere. And I think we've achieved that with the Gary V shoes. I don't think we've achieved it brand wide yet, but we've got the first evidence.
Yeah.
And in fact, people have told us, hey, I had an hour-long conversation with a stranger because they were wearing the K-Swiss Gary V Clouds and Dirt.
Happened to me twice already. One was at the airport. I'm like in line, and I'm like looking down at my phone or something, and literally I'm like, holy shit, those are the Gary V's. And I look up, and we're like kind of passing. I'm like, dude, I don't know you, but I know you hustle. And he looks down, he's like, oh, dude, you have the Gary V's too. And just like that. And I went on his Instagram, and I checked it, and I learned a lot about that because he's just starting out in his journey. I think he had like 3 posts, maybe 20 followers, but he's wearing Gary V's, and I could tell like the ambition was there. And that was before I even worked here. Yeah. And so that's when I was like, oh shit.
So the shoes instantly becomes a conversation piece, which I think to transition this into where we're at today, which is this intersection of being an entrepreneur mixed with urban and hip hop culture.
Yeah.
I know I was at, I want to say it was either Saks or Bloomingdale's recently over in Glendale. And I walked into the Gucci store and they had dad shoes for over $1,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, my goodness, like this is crazy.
Yeah.
These are like regular chunky sneakers that would have probably been like $20 at Sports Authority if you remove Gucci. Now you throw Gucci on them, they're over $1,000.
Right, it's the power of brands.
It's the power of brands, and I was like, who would wear these?
Yeah, and look, I think product now there's parity in creating product. Okay, so a sneaker's essentially everybody's using rubber with either leather or a textile upper with shoelaces. There's no magic in the shoe, right? I mean, you could design it differently, but we're all selling the same stuff, okay? So the brand is the only thing really that separates you. The real value's in the brand, not in the materials, right? And again, that's true of any business. If you're a sandwich shop, everyone who's a sandwich shop is using bread and the stuff in the middle, right? It's not about the materials, it's how you present the brand. So in the old days, product quality and material use was kind of the signature, and you'd sell on that. Now I think we're getting into the phase where brand is becoming even more important, and might be the only important thing, when anyone can get something produced now with all the power of Google and the web and podcasts and YouTube tutorials. I mean, I know I could make anything, right, with all the access I have. So
podcast room.
Yeah, podcast room.
But how important though that is sorry to interrupt, how important is your partners again and the faces of your brand that you're working with?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think it's got to start with again, my advice would be you've got to have a North Star, which should inform everything. And the North Star has to be, what does your brand stand for beyond the product? What's a bigger ideal that you could look at something like Starts With Why from Simon Sinek is a great example of discussing your brand's bigger purpose. Most brands don't have one. Most brands are still product focused, right? Features and functions. No one cares about that stuff anymore because everybody can do the same thing. So what you stand for becomes more important. What you stand for then becomes this North Star, and then all your personalities you attach to it should all index up to that ideal. And if that ideal is bigger than the product and it's authentic, that's when people get emotionally connected to you. Okay, and when they're emotionally connected to you, that's when you have a community, not just traffic. That's the key. So for K-Swiss, we make sneakers. Our bigger goal is, or our bigger ideal is, that we inspire and outfit entrepreneurs. Okay, that makes it easy to pick Gary V. And when we talk to you about entrepreneurship, we're getting you in the fields, all right? And now you're going to come dialogue with us all the time, not just come once and go away again. And that's the formula. And so it's really hard. The hardest part is to know what you stand for and have everyone committed to buying into that, and for it to be right and authentic. Not easy, but if you don't have that, I would spend all my waking hours until I nailed that piece.
Besides Gary Vee, and by the way, like, that's a great formula, and I appreciate you sharing those keys to success, because I think any business out there, regardless of size, should be modeling that.
Even your own personal brand on social media. If you're trying to build a social media audience, it's like, what are you doing that's unique? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I can go to 20 other fitness models and follow them. Right. What are you doing that's bigger than just that? So it doesn't just apply to bigger businesses. Same rules apply all the way through.
Agreed. Now, besides Gary Vee, who are some other partners or perhaps big names that you guys have worked with or are currently working with?
Well, we have a lot of collaborators for special projects. We do a lot of that stuff. Some of which are entrepreneurs, like Anwar Carrots. So Anwar Carrots is a young entrepreneur who runs his brand called Carrots. So we have a collaboration with him. We're about to launch early next year a sneaker with a female CEO who runs an ice cream company, who we just loved her story. So we've done a sneaker with her, again, micro-influencer, but a very committed following, and just fits our values perfectly. And then we'll also do just fun collaborations with, interesting properties, like, 90s is popular now. So we reached out to a couple of 90s movies, real cult movies from the 90s, and we've got some movie sneakers coming out that will just further cement this idea of K-Swiss from the 90s. I'll show you them off camera.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Like, I'm curious to know, what is people's obsession with the 90s? Like, the way I look at it is, I grew up in the 90s, so I walk into a shopping mall nowadays and I go into Foot Locker and I literally see every single pair of sneakers that was popular when I was in middle school. The difference is I now can afford those sneakers, whereas before I did ask my parents for them.
Exactly. Maybe that's it.
Is that like the nostalgic mindset? Like, all right, let's hit the wallets of, like, people in their 30s and 40s, because they're going to see these brands like Champion, for example, and now all of a sudden they're going to want to deck their kids out with it because they used to wear it.
Yeah.
But it's spun differently though, right? When you think of Champion, when I thought of Champion when it was re-emerging, I was like, that's was that like a Kmart, Walmart brand?
It was the Walmart athletic brand.
Yep, and then they changed it, making it super hip. And when you see it in like Urban Outfitters or Zoomies or all this, and it's flashy, that's the switch.
Yeah, I think it's interesting is a lot of these nostalgic brands are coming back with a little tweak of modern, a little modern spin to it. Like it was interesting, I saw Kappa's booth recently. Kappa's an old brand, and the whole booth had the logo upside down. Such a subtle thing, but it's almost saying like, hey, you remember us, we're the old brand, but we're not exactly the old brand. You know, we're a little irreverent still. And it's like, you need, it needs to be, there's value in reliable things that have stood the test of time, but kids want it to still be like, give me a little bit of today's flavor. And that's the combination.
I mean, if you see the meme that says no one will remember, or kids nowadays won't remember the real back to school shoe, and you see the classic Via and the K-Swiss, I think that's the funniest one, because you can take that exact photo and maybe Photoshop a cool person or something different, and then that whole thing just changes.
Speaking of photos, after this interview, I'm going to have my mom dig up some high school photos of me so I can send it to you, gentlemen. We'll probably like overlay it here in the interview also, so everyone can see me rocking K-Swiss. So they know I was a customer like way back in the day. I definitely know that I'll be a customer again, especially after meeting both of you guys. Look, on a closing note, I want to know selfishly, as a entrepreneur, if myself or any of my homies out there wanted to have our own collab, how does that process happen?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to have an audience. So that's undeniable is, you know, when you come to the table with a collaboration, it's about what are you doing for me and what am I doing for you? And it's like, can you provide me something I don't have and I can provide something you don't have? That's an ideal collaboration, right? So Gary has the reach and the audience and the voice, and I have a sneaker brand. He wants a sneaker, I want his reach, perfect combination. So in that case, you've got to have an engaged audience of a scale and size that's worth us investing the time. And what we have to provide to you is a brand that you really like. So you go, yeah, I can get down with that. And right, so you both come to the table with equal value. That's the key. But I think it starts with audience, and then obviously for us, it's about who's relevant to our mission. So because we talk about entrepreneurs, should be an entrepreneur with a big audience. That's a good conversation to have as a start point.
How much do the Ferraris and bling bling impress you guys? Not much.
I like old cars, so
okay.
I think, look, most real entrepreneurs are not in it for the money, or because the reason I know that is because once they're successful, they go back to square one and start something else. So it's like, it's definitely, if you don't like the journey, you're in the wrong business. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think if you get into this because you want the pot of gold, you're not going to survive the journey. Most people who are in it are in it because the hustle is what's really a change. When they get the gold, they'll put it away and go back and start the journey again.
Well, I think it's like any competitor out there, you're going to win several times throughout your journey, to your point, but winning only happens once, and then you want to win some more, and you want to keep going because that's the true competitor in you. You don't just win one time and say, well, I've made it, I'm successful, now I'm going to stop here. It's like, I'm looking at this mountain right here, right? When you get to the top, you're like, all right, what's next?
Right, yeah.
That was
you were the Ferrari though, right?
Yeah, I'm not the Ferrari guy.
You're not the Ferrari guy?
Oh, okay.
No way.
Hey, I wouldn't say no to one, don't get me wrong.
I'm a Subaru guy.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Like the Subarus, Foresters, my car.
That's like super lame.
What? I just said no, but that's relatable. Like
simple.
here's the thing, because I often say this, like, again, going back to culture.
Lost all respect.
Going back to culture, right? So like my son who's 13 will watch a Ty Lopez video and say, I want to work for the Lambo, right?
Yeah.
I, as a 35-year-old, want to work to have a house that's paid off. I want to have a car that's paid off, right? I don't want to have debt just to impress people on Instagram, which aren't necessarily cutting me a check.
Yeah.
So going back to your point, there's more people that drive a Corolla or a Subaru Outback than drive a Ferrari or a Lamborghini.
For
no
sure.
Outback though,
Yeah, for sure. No, 100%. And look, I think when I was younger, I definitely wanted the Ferrari. So I think with age has probably made me realize a bit more that, desire, the things that we desire is like, it's a carrot on the stick. You never really get closer to it because you'll keep moving the goalposts. So you always want more. The only truth is being happy in the moment. That's the reality of it. Like, if I'm not happy now doing this with you guys, then I'm in the wrong business. Even though my goal is bigger, I only ever live here, so this has to be good for me, because that carrot's never really getting closer. If I've already reached the carrot, I'm going to put a bigger one further away and keep going towards it.
And I think that's a true entrepreneurial mindset. Now, before we wrap up, let's talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, because we spoke about that off camera. It seems like you've developed a culture here of entrepreneurs, right? You are essentially like head of PR and comms on social media, right? And it sounds like you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, so you have that bug of thinking outside the box as opposed to just being contained within the corporate structure.
You've done both. So do you feel, so you've been an entrepreneur and now you're in a company. What's the difference?
The difference is you realize that now it's not just about me and the end goal, it's a team. And that same mindset of like knowing, being positive and loving the team and everything, that's what I like took from it. It's like, how can I apply everything that I've learned and incorporate it into a company? Because that's when you buy in, and the same goal that you wanted for yourself, you just want it now and you apply it to a brand.
Yeah, and you've got to find a company that it gives people some ability to make decisions. Okay, so it's one thing to be an entrepreneur or to be entrepreneurial in a corporation. It doesn't work if you're in a corporation that's all rules and regulations. Okay, so you've got to find the right fit where they're open to that and they want people to kind of, go do some stuff. So that's about the company. It's also about the people you're working with. Is like, is the boss, what are they like their people to be like? You know what I'm saying? It's that's really important, is the cultural fit. And some people who are if you are entrepreneurial and you're put into a corporate situation, it could drive you absolutely crazy. And similarly, if you're a very structured corporate type person, you get put into a free-flowing entrepreneurial organization, it's a really bad fit too. So it's always worth like trying to figure out what the culture of the company is you're going to work in. Otherwise you could be banging your head against a wall. I mean, I've tried to create here a team of entrepreneurs that are all kind of marching to the same goal, and I think we've had mixed results, but it's an ongoing process. I'm not saying we nailed it yet, but anyone could come in here and record. Omar has his own podcast and does High Five Fridays. He comes in here, records, has his own channel to his own people. Cool, we love that. So,
I know you're gonna have a lot of people out there that are watching this interview. They say like, Barney's a cool ass CEO. Omar's dope. So
it's not true though, right?
Are you currently hiring? Are you accepting some resumes?
Yeah, a couple of areas we are. But I think like if you've got skills to bring to the table, and if you love the mission, those are the people we like to have on the team.
Last question for you, Barney. Are there any plans for K-Swiss to drop a business casual or dress casual loafer type shoe?
Yes, I think we're definitely looking to drop next year, 2019, something that's purpose-built for the entrepreneur. And it's been created from listening to a lot of entrepreneurs talk about what it is they need in their life as an entrepreneur. And we've sort of whittled it down to about 5 to 7 situational needs that most entrepreneurs have, and we've tried to apply that into a product, and that'll be coming out next year.
Is that product designed yet?
Yes.
Can I see it?
Yes.
Excellent.
But we're gonna have to kill you straight up.
Guys, closing note, starting with you, Omar, and then Barney. Where can the viewers out there learn more about you, and where can they connect with you?
Omar Presswitch everywhere. Simple. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Easy to remember.
At K-Swiss, he is at K-Swiss. So if ever you're on at K-Swiss, you're talking to Omar. And
It's
for
true.
me, at K-Swiss, all channels, and then myself at Barney Waters, probably Instagram or LinkedIn.